Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kramer. I have Tim Calise with us. We're going to talk about how to make your business profitable. I know we're going to get into some good stuff, Tim. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Leach, for having me. I am looking forward to it as well. Appreciate being
I
here.
I know that we share a few mindset things as far as business is concerned. I know that you really do specialize in an area that I think is going to be fantastic to talk about for this particular audience. We've been in business for a while. So we know that there are going to be some hard knocks. We know that statistically, many of our attempts are not going to be necessarily successful. They're not all going to be winners. You see a lot of these cliches about the mindset of you don't look at it as failure, you look at it as learning. Well, that's easier said than done, especially in the early stages in business, whether it's your first couple of months, your first couple of years, even. I mean, I can admit that even now, I still sometimes get a little bit discouraged by certain things that I try or test, and there's a lot of pivoting. But for those individuals who this is so important to them, getting it right in business. Maybe you've been there. I know I've been there. It's like, I got to get this right. As a mom, when my first child was on the way, it's like, I got to get this right. Anytime I've had a downswing in my business, I'm like, I got to get this right. uh,
Absolutely.
so for those listening, let's talk a bit about that. Let's talk about what do you see as this common thing that business owners are bumping up against when it comes to getting some traction in their business?
Yeah. So I think so. My background is I actually started in the investment world in my early 20s, buying and selling stocks and things like that. And so that experience led me to understanding the idea of risk. And that is ultimately what we're talking about. What is the risk of risk of failure? What is the chances of success? And so I'm wired to think about in the next step that I need to take, and whether that be you might not have even started yet, before I step onto the field, how can I reduce the chances of a misstep to the greatest extent possible? And so some of the things that we hear, and one of my favorites is like the idea of, fail fast, learn fast, or some version thereof. I will tell you from personal experience, when I started some of the first kind of ideas and brought them to market, I spent a lot of time thinking through the ideal product, the ideal avatar. I tried to do all the thinking ahead of time. And then when I went to market, if it wasn't a huge success, I took that as a failure, a personal failure, rather than a failure of the idea. And so what I would encourage you, or what I've learned, is how do you actually reduce the risk? You inverse the process, invert the process. So what that would look like would be, I would, I, I have an idea. I'd like to, create a way for podcast hosts who are parents to get greater distribution. Like maybe that's my idea. I could build the product and build all of the service and all of that kind of stuff first. Or I could say, hey, Alicia, I have an idea. I'm thinking that I'm going to create something that allows this type of person to achieve this outcome. If I did something like that, would that be of interest to you? And you might say, yeah, I love every bit of what you just said. If you do it, I'll buy. Or you might say, you have like half of it, but if it had this other thing, I would absolutely be in. So that journey to the nose should be before creation, not after, because it allows you to evolve without the shield up, the personal uh, barriers that we have to put up to defend ourselves. Then you're actually looking for the nose because it's evolution and not a justification about your value to the world.
A lot of this really is mindset stuff.
Yeah.
it's a bit cliche in some respects to say that mindset is the foundation for success. Everybody's talking about mindset, but really it's so fundamental. If you're looking at it in this most basic fundamental sense, if you can't get out of your own way, you're dead in the water. Like
Yep.
you're never going to withstand the internal battle that goes
Yeah.
on as you're putting yourself out there. I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the mindset challenges, we'll
Mhm.
say, that you're witnessing your clients really bumping into as they are navigating this fun journey of business.
Yeah. So I am a father of three. I'm also in my early 40s, just for sake of, and I'm happy to disclose that. And I say that simply because I think there is a mindset amongst a number of existing business owners that it's a young person's game and that like it's too late for me to do something. Or I have three kids, so therefore I don't have the ability to dedicate all of my time and efforts and headspace to my business, and therefore I cannot compete. I actually think for me, it actually was a big block about 5 to 6 years ago because I saw all these people around me who were, 10 years younger who could do the 18-hour days, 7 days a week. And I was like, they just have more opportunity than I do. And it probably cost me a couple of years because I spent more time thinking about that than actually and creating the self-fulfilling prophecy than actually going out and doing the work. And so that's something that I see in a lot of clients as well, which is trying to understand how they could be competitive. And you can actually see the shift from uh, here are all the reasons why I can't get to where I want to go to uncovering what it is that is their kind of zone of genius. And then they think, well, how can this go wrong? And I understand I now have to get rid of all the other things that stand in the way of that, which means I might work 4 hours a day or 4 hours a week. I know a guy who does $13 million a year in revenue, 95% gross margin or net margin, excuse me, which means he's making about $12.5 million a year, 30 million a year. And he works one day a week for 5 hours because that is how he has built his life. He was in the exact same spot. He was like, I was just doing a whole lot of things that didn't actually move the needle forward. Once I realized what I was really good at, I basically just found people to do everything else. And that was what was right for him. So there's an answer out there. It just depends on how we want to put the puzzle pieces together.
So that would be a dream come true for a lot of people listening.
Yep.
Now, you're a parent, I'm a parent. We're both in our 40s. Uh,
I wasn't pushing you there. I was so,
regardless
yeah.
regardless of where someone is at on their journey, there are always going to be seemingly justifiable excuses for why it's not working as well as they want it to, or they believe that it could. We've got to challenge those things. And
Mhm.
I love the example that you shared about someone who has created a business based on his values, his goals, his because there are a lot of people who have this, we'll call it an idea. It's a belief that's been really hammered. And I see it all the time. I log into Instagram and I'm seeing all the posts that are, hustle and grind and, work more than anybody else will do and work all weekend long while people are watching the, football, those losers, like, you see all this
Yeah.
stuff. And so to put it into a different perspective for someone who is kind of wrestling with this idea, like, do I have to sell my soul in order to, have a successful business? Do I have to be that horrible business owner who is always too busy to go to their child's, dance recital and soccer games and all of that stuff? And there's so much evidence that that's not true. I want to I want to get a little bit of your perspective on that. I know that you get into your clients' worlds a little bit. So, what is realistic as far as you are concerned, based on what you've seen from that incredible example that you just shared, to perhaps somebody who maybe is in a different type of business? Maybe they are the business, maybe they are the service provider currently, and so they need to be putting in a bit more hours. Can you speak to that, so that for someone who is questioning, can I actually do this without putting in 60 or 80-hour weeks?
Yeah. So first, I will say I do believe that we go through seasons in our life. So there may be, and I'm not a everything is sunshine and roses and it'll all be easy if you just do this one thing. There might be a time where you have to hunker down and say, for the next 90 days, the next 30 days, whatever it might be, my business and I need to do this one thing. And I have those seasons where it goes wrong is if that becomes the norm. It's like, when you turn that short term window becomes the long term, it becomes quarters and then years. That's where that resentful feeling starts to come in. It becomes consuming. So that's the first. The second is I believe that product trumps everything. So if you have an existing business or you are launching a business and it's feeling like it's not getting traction or it's requiring a lot more time, effort, resources to support, chances are something's broken. And a lot of us think, well, if I had more time and more money, I would go market more, I would go do more. I would actually change the lens and say, if the product's not working as well as it could, and the test for this is if you are not allowed to acquire another customer from this point forward, and the only way your business can grow would be from referral, how likely is it your business will succeed? Because what most people will say is like, I'd be in a really bad spot. Well, why? Because my average client only stays for 2 months. Why? Well, because they say it doesn't have this thing that they really need, or they go off and buy something else. Okay, fix that, like the leaky bucket, and then you can start to go back into building a business that is sustainable. That's kind of the second piece, I would say. And the third, and this was the hardest thing for me personally, talk about mindset. I believed, and I'm a visual person. I had this vision that I was kind of sitting outside of the market and I would go step into an existing marketplace and try to compete or try to get try to sell into an existing market. And that was really hard for me because I translated that as I need to be something that the marketplace will resonate with, meaning I am going to them. What I have now come to realize is the best way to do it, and this comes out of the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, I believe it's the second chapter, which is how can you create a category of one? How do you create a marketplace where you are the market? I mean, a lot of people talk about Taylor Swift these days. Taylor Swift is not just a musician. She has created a single market. There is no substitute for who she is and what she represents. So how can you use what is uniquely gifted to yourself? You are the market. You are the niche. You just have to figure out what that means for what it is you're trying to accomplish. And that for me was like a groundbreaking idea because there's no weird combination of like a finance guy that's done technology, that's also done coaching. It just doesn't exist, but it does within me. And what does that mean for the people that I am very blessed to be able to have a chance to work with?
I love it. So you've dropped a few nuggets, things that people may need to actually put some thought into. Now, I know that this conversation has gone really, really, really fast. And I feel like we've barely covered much of anything, even though we got into some pretty deep stuff within such a short period of time. I want to make sure that our listeners know how they can connect with you. They may be you're that person for them, right? And even if they're just curious, how can they learn more from you, connect with you, follow you?
Yeah. So if you talk to the folks that I've had a chance to work with, they will say that I don't hire Tim because of what he knows. I hire him and I stick with him, and my clients stay for years, is because of who he represents to me. And so if anything I've said kind of resonates with you, I would be honored to have a chance to have it to see how I can help you. So my website is timcalise.com. That's TIMCALISE.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I monitor all my own DMs. So if anything resonated with you, just reach out and say that you were a listener of the show, and I'll do everything that I can to hopefully get you from that stuck position. A mentor of mine says transformations don't happen in isolation. And my extension of that is you also can't read the label from inside the bottle. So, what that means for you is you probably have everything that you need to be successful, but you just need a different point of view to unlock it. So, if anything I've said resonates with you, I would be honored to hopefully lend you my confidence in you and allow you to get to where you want to go in life and in business.
Fantastic. I want to thank you so much, Tim. This has been a very quick, power-packed episode, um, full of value. I do encourage our listeners to connect with you. And of course, I've got to thank all of our listeners too, because, we're doing it for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.